The scene was dead anyway. A music scene lives, a music scene dies. The stories, however, are immortal. The scene was dead anyway is a look into the lives, communities, and music scenes that help shape an entire generation. Hello everyone and welcome to The Scene Was Dead Anyway, and I'm your host Rick Walland. This is episode number 7, and today I'm joined by Emma Thompson, the founder and owner of Fat Out, a music promotion based in Salford, England. Emma Thompson, Fat Out, thanks for coming on the show.
No worries, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I guess we could just start with, if you want to just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your promotion company or promotion Fat Out.
Sure.
If you want to give us a little...
I'm Emma. I moved up to Manchester in 2007 from Milton Keynes. I came up here firstly for uni, and then I started Fat Out in my first year when I moved up here. Mainly just to put on my friends' bands because there was a really sort of good D.I.Y scene back from where I come from. The first show was just like I wanted to put on my mate's band, and then it just kind of escalated, and then we met Islington Mill and our love affair with them began, and yeah, here I am sort of 13 years later, and somehow Fat Out's my career, which is amazing.
So let's go back to, so you're from Milton Keynes. Obviously, you talked a bit about in the emails about Don Mclean and his label Fortissimo Records. Was that for you? Was that kind of when you started going to shows? Really, was through what he was putting on back in the maybe early noughties, I guess. Yeah,
mainly like I met David and Don and Lewis, the Mclean brothers. I'm gonna say like 2007, 8ish. Actually, no, before that, because before I moved to Manchester. So yeah, anyway, early noughties, as he said. And yeah, I think they were like the Fortissimo shows were my first kind of exposure to kind of the post-punk scene and experimental music, and kind of Milton Keynes was quite, at that time, was sort of, a lot of it was kind of more cheesy rock bands. And so the sort of Bletchley Fortissimo kind of gave that alternative. And they massively introduced me to like D.I.Y ways of running shows and Discord records, and like how a lot of those kind of post-punk bands sort of did everything themselves and kind of promoted the shows, made the flyers, all those kind of things. Those shows were rowdy and really, really fun, and kind of introduced me to a lot of other bands from the UK and from Europe and from further afield. Got to kind of see a lot of really, really good bands and a lot of good local bands before I kind of made my move north. So yeah, they were hugely inspiring to what I do, and I kind of really did sort of start the sort of foundations of what sort of ethically Fat Out is about.
And the main, would you say the main sort of venue at the time in Milton Keynes was Bletchley Youth Club? I think
the Leisure Centre was a lot of shows that they did there. There was the Windmill Hill Golf Club, which was quite a notorious Bletchley show that there's actually a video for when the police came and shut it down. I can't remember what song it is, but it's basically Joe Nobes downing pints and a really rowdy show that then gets shut down by the police.
You're going to tell us a bit about that then? That sounds...
Yeah, I mean...
If you can remember much about it.
Most Bletchley shows are all just like tops off lads fucking getting pissed and getting rowdy and playing shows. So yeah, a lot of our kind of... the deep rowdiness that is embedded within Fat Out came from those kind of early gigs. But yeah, there was always this Milton Keynes Bletchley rivalry, which is all like I'm kind of still fascinated by in a way, because like the scenes were really different. And there's actually recently been a Milton Keynes music book that's been made, and I really want the Bletchley one to be made because it will show the kind of parallels.
What's the book called?
It's by MK-based journalist called Sammy Jones. I think it's called like something in sound, live in sound or something about Milton Keynes.
Okay, I'll check it out.
But yeah, it's a really thorough sort of history of the Milton Keynes scene. But I definitely feel that the Bletchley and the kind of niche bit that I was involved in wasn't as written about as thoroughly as it could have been. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to kind of archive a lot of these shows.
Write your own book then, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
A little
rival.
Who are the main sort of bands and artists at the time? I know obviously Action Beat, we played with them as Samuel Sharp a couple of times, and that's like Don Mclean, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think how we got when you played the early Fat Out shows, I think it was because you had played for Don before. That's how we kind of got to be connected. But yeah, I mean, Action Beat, it's kind of a revolving group of people that's kind of heralded by Don. But then there was Darker Doe, who are another Bletchley band. Dawn Chorus, that was Luke Webb, and I think there was his project. And then there were some Milton Keynes bands like sort of Rose Vivendi and Monoset. They were the kind of local ones. But then Joe Lally from Fugazi played one of the shows. Cowtown and APAT. So some of the kind of northern D.I.Y bands had kind of come down. So yeah, and Dalek as well. And Charles Hayward. They all played for Fortissimo at some point. So yeah, there was lots of a really, really strong local scene. But there was also loads of really interesting kind of national and international artists that kind of came through because of the scene they created.
Yeah, I remember we played Bletchley Youth Club, Samuel Sharp. It was 2006. And we put our own tour together, and we got a date in Milton Keynes, and it was quite an interesting venue. I remember it being like a pyramid shaped.
Yeah, it's like a glass pyramid.
Yeah, and it's got water, almost like a moat around it. It's this place is super weird.
Yeah, there are lots of kind of weird places because I think there's because Milton Keynes is so it's such a new city and it's such a sort of corporate capitalist city that the venues sort of DIY venues as such weren't really a thing. So it was kind of finding the back rooms of old pubs or leisure centres or community spaces that would kind of let them put on shows. And so there was often quite weird, especially for touring bands coming, being like, what the hell am I here? What's going on?
It was fun because we played with Action Beat, and they were always great live, just like a great live band, and there was a few of the people from the scene there, and that was nice to be able to play for them. Yeah, and
I mean, David, Don's brother, he's been a huge part of Fat Out. He worked with us through for a good few years, and so and a lot of people from Bletchley and Milton Keynes have moved up to Manchester. So there's been a good invasion of us up here, and we're kind of still we did a 24-hour Action Beat show at the Mill, when we had the venue. I think that was 2016, I think, where the kind of rule was that had to have at least one member of Action Beat playing at one time, but there was kind of a revolving group of people that can come and do some noisy improv. But that was a mental show.
So did you actually put any shows on yourself in Milton Keynes, or was it only when you first moved to Manchester that you started
I didn't put on any shows in Milton Keynes at all. I just went to them. I think I kind of got very interested in the DIY and I think because I had such a good crew down there and so many friends and a really interesting scene, I kind of missed that when I first moved up here to a new city where I didn't know many people. So I think kind of starting Fat Out was almost a reaction to that, of being a bit homesick and wanting my pals around me. And then the first Fat Out show was at Saki Bar in Rusholme.
Yeah, I remember
and there was two bands from Milton Keynes. So there was Orion Arm, and I think Modus Vivendi played the first one. And then we had a band called Hyena, who were from Scotland. I think they're from Glasgow. who again I'd met. I think they had played in Milton Keynes, and then there were two Manchester bands, one of who were Nod, and the other one was Blood Moon, which is Louise Woodcock and Graham Dunning's project. And then I went on to start a band with Louise many years later. And it was kind of weird. Like, I've no idea how Nod and Blood Moon played the first Fat Out show, but there was and it's just kind of quite strange and coincidental because I didn't speak to that group of people that much for the first sort of 3-4 years of Fat Out. And then they became a huge part of my life and my creativity and my mill family many years later. So it's kind of beautiful and poetic meeting them at the very start of it, but then it kind of taking a bit of time to actually kind of get to know them properly. And I remember meeting Louise and Graham outside of my halls of residence to give them some flyers that I'd printed in the photocopy room of my uni. And just being like, wow, who are these crazy creatures? Like, it all begun.
So what was you kind of initially what you set out to do was just put a few shows on, just, you know, create like a little community. You didn't have like great ambitions like, I want to, you know, become like, you know, huge like promoter, and it was just like,
no, I mean, I don't think I even really considered like what it could be, or even kind of dreamt that something called Fat Out Till You Pass Out could be something that I could do professionally. I think like the first sort of few shows were just winging it really and putting on our mates' bands, and then anyone that kind of got in touch via MySpace that sounded interesting. But I think the more like sort of I think maybe in the second or third year of running it, just at the end of me finishing my degree, we met the Mill, and the kind of the show started to get a bit bigger. Like we put on Wolves in the Throne Room, and who else, like the Dalek and Charles Hayward shows, and the kind of sort of started to, and I just became obsessed with it, and it was like kind of took over my creative thinking for my degree. I've finished and passed my degree in interactive arts, but I kind of Fat Out by that point had just become my kind of sole sort of focus and baby really. And I think it's only kind of since like maybe kind of before we opened the venue that I kind of even really I was still working up until the venue, working for like had my bar job to sort of alongside it. So it's never something until we kind of had space that I considered that could be my full-time job. But I kind of work freelance for other festivals and stuff, but predominantly within the kind of festival and events world is what I do now. So I'm super, super lucky and very grateful for that.
And what about the name then? Because I'm interested to know what's the background.
So the name, and this is proof that I had absolutely no planning to that Fat Out to become what it has done. But Fat Out Till You Pass Out was a game that my sister used to play, and it used to made me really laugh because we went on very similar kind of like post-school holidays to Spain with our group of friends. When I went, we just went out and got really pissed every night and were like fucking pain in the ass to my parents. And when my sister went out, she was a lot more like subdued up until in her teenage years than I was. And she played, instead of like going out and stuff, she played this game called Fat Out Till You Pass Out, which is essentially like get loads of scranny and get loads of food and just eat until you're so full that you have a nap. And I just found that the whole thing just like ridiculous and hilarious, and like I love an in-joke, and I think it's sometimes to my detriment. Called it Fat Out Till You Pass Out. We dropped the Till You Pass Out bit. I think when we shut the venue, just because Fat Out was a bit more punchier. And I mean a lot of, and now I'm kind of assessing my like subconscious connection to the name as I kind of explore more of my own body positivity and kind of being sort of being a visible fat person, and kind of being like sort of making sure that like, as I kind of like sort of delve into my own personal experiences with that kind of how like really liking that Fat Out as a name is kind of making sort of other fat creatives feel comfortable and accessible, and kind of representing a diverse range of bodies within what I do as well, and kind of having an awareness within that. So although that wasn't kind of, that would have been a really beautiful, like, sort of conceptual way of kind of, sort of bringing self-confidence. But no, it was my sister playing a game when she ate too much till she passed out. But I like to feel that maybe there was a subconscious parallel within them.
but it's stuck to a certain extent. Obviously, you've dropped part of the name, but
Yeah,
it's
drop the bit that's slightly more rad and kind of fat out is the kind of maybe more grown up version.
so in terms of we've mentioned the Islington Mill, which is do you want to talk a bit about Islington Mill and where it is, what it is, and
Yeah.
how is important of a role that is played for you as a promoter?
So Islington Mill is an art space in Salford. It was founded in '97 by a wonderful human called Bill Campbell. And essentially, Bill wanted to set up as visual art studios to enable creativity and kind of, give artists space to create. Over the years, it's been going. It's just basically a cultural hub and a home and a community for so many people. It supports a huge breadth of LGBT plus artists, and I wouldn't be sat I wouldn't have the career I did without this building and without the support of the people that have kind of taken a chance on me along the way. It's a very open space, and it's very they're kind of it's constantly changing and constantly morphing and allowing new people and new energies to come in and have their time. And I kind of see it as almost this kind of place where you can kind of comfortably make mistakes and grow ideas and meet people, and it kind of sort of introduces you to a really wide international community of artists. Our first show here was with Master Musicians of Bukaki. And very shortly after that was the first Fat Out Fest. And I remember coming to meet, it was Mark Carlin, who was the director at the time, coming to meet him, being like, I want to put on a 2-day punk festival. And he was like, yeah, sure. There was no talk of venue hire. There was no what's your background? It was just he could kind of see mine and Verity's energy. And at the time as well, what we did and what the Mill did were quite opposite. You know what I mean? I've come from sort of this sort of post-punk alternative D.I.Y. See, the D.I.Y. crosses over for sure, but it's been predominantly kind of relatively working with sort of straight musicians and artists, and then the Mills come from a very queer background, and that has massively influenced me as a person, but also me as a curator and producer, and it's been sort of completely paramount in everything that I've been involved in with the residency program Summer Beta that I run, which is about kind of giving musicians time and space to create on a residency, as a lot of visual artists have the opportunity to do. It's still I'm in my I've still got a studio here, and involved in kind of future talks and plans, and it's a really, really inspiring place to be, and I'm really, really grateful that I'm part of that community.
So you mentioned Verity. Were you working together initially as Fat Out?
Yeah, so I actually started Fat Out with a woman called Ali Gunn, who I knew from Milton Keynes, and then Verity joined, and Verity was completely paramount in the development of Fat Out, and we worked together up until the closure of the venue, and then we sort of really amicably decided she decided to step away and kind of pursue her own career, and then I've continued it on my own since we closed the venue in 2017, and we still kind of she comes on as a producer when we do the festival and various other things. So I mean, me and Verity are childhood friends. I've known her since I was 5 years old. She's still very much part of my life, but has sort of stepped down from the day-to-day runnings of Fat Out.
Yeah, and so I wanted to talk about some of the pretty big names that you over the years you managed to bring to the Islington Mill under Fat Out. So Melt Banana, Chris Cassano, Lydia Lunch, Swans.
Yeah.
How was that, and getting those guys in, and how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, Lydia Lunch, I remember the first time I met Lydia Lunch, we booked her for the second Fat Out Fest. And I really vividly remember we were meant to pick her up from the airport or the train station, and she'd got an earlier flight or train, and basically just didn't comment, being like, I've got a change of time. She just rocked up at the mill, like walked straight down the ramp and arrived and was just like, "Hi, I'm Lydia Lunch. I'm here to play the festival." And at that point, like, and I was just like, I'm a huge Lydia Lunch fan, and I was like, "Oh, hi," like sort of trying to be all like professional, but also it kind of really made me like, I think there's a lot of like babysitting, and especially when it comes to some like requests that some artists have of like transport requests and all these kind of things, like you've got to hold their hand from the minute they're off the plane to the minute you put them on to the next promoter, and I just can't be arsed with that. It's not the DIY spirit. It's kind of not like I respect artists and obviously will treat them and pay them properly, but I think like hand holding, especially when someone like Lydia Lunch can show up and find a way to some weird warehouse in Salford when she doesn't even live in this country. So yeah, meeting her was amazing. And I remember paying her at the end of the festival and being like, "Oh God, I just want to ask about all the people that she's fucked." And I was like, "Can I ask you about Nick Cave?" And she was like, "You want to talk rock star sex?" And I was like, "Oh my God, more than anything." And she was like, "Yeah, Nick Cave has got a big dick. He doesn't like to fuck." And she's like, "Gene Simmons, who hasn't fucked him?" And then she was like, she was like, "Gene Cope, he's got a multicolored dick." So I was just like,
That's who I was thinking of. Yeah, because I read his book. I read his book not too long ago, and I remember the bit where he talks about getting it on with Lydia Lunch.
Yeah. And yeah, Lydia then came and did a summer beat residency, and like I book her every time she comes into Manchester. We went out and went out to Paris to see her the screening of her film in February. So yeah, it's kind of surreal thinking back to sort of being Lydia kind of being sort of friend now. And yeah, like I don't know, there's been when we had Thursday Moore play, and we were like, I think there was a moment that I pinched myself because I'm a huge Sonic Youth fan.
Wow, that's great.
And we went to go and pick up his partner from the train station, and he was like, "I'm just gonna go get some snacks." And we were in the Sainsbury's in Piccadilly, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm like some fucking grocery shopping with Thursday Moore here. Like, what's going on?" So there's been some like surreal moments like that and stuff, but yeah, it's been a wild ride.
What is there any shows that kind of stick out in your memory that you are like the highlight of your whole time as a promoter that you can
The
think
Sol
of?
Williams show, which was one of the last, if not the penultimate show we did in the borough. And I've been trying to book Sol Williams for years, and we finally did, and it sold out. And the energy in the room was just amazing. And he actually brought his daughter along on tour with him. And I think it's List of Demands, but there's a sample on that of her as a kid, and it's like the wah, 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 wah. That was a sample that he made of her when she was a kid, and she actually got on stage and did it. And I got this like beautiful photo of like just like pure joy on his face as sort of having his daughter on stage singing, and it was just electric. And yeah, she said that she very, very rarely does that, but felt really, really comfortable within the space. So yeah, that's definitely a highlight. The Action Beat 24 Hour was amazing because it was just like mates in a room making noise for 24 hours whilst me and my bar team tried to keep as many Bletchley boys sober so they could play as possible. That was really entertaining. And then the last borough party, I think, was definitely a highlight. We had a huge meal for, I think there was about 120 of us, 150 of us, over in one of the warehouses behind Islington Mill. We had like a full sit-down dinner. My parents, it felt like mine and Verity's wedding day, because like our parents were there, and they were like, we had like a drinks reception beforehand, and we all went down and sat dinner, and there were speeches and blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
So yeah, it felt yeah, it was a good, and then we all went over, and that was kind of like a private invited thing, and then we went over, and there was a big party in the borough. And there was we had Dak Sabbath. They headlined the live music element of the night. And then after that, High Hoops curated the after party, and they booked Yadava to play afterwards. And there was just this moment when me, Robbie, and Marcus were stood with Gadaver at the side of the stage, and there was a full-on mosh pit going on. And yeah, the DJ had kind of walked in being like, "I'm DJing after this, you know what I'm playing." And And
I love
yeah,
mosh pits.
yeah, and it was like this. Oh, do you remember mosh pits? But there was this beautiful moment where, yeah, Dak Sabbath finished playing. You had Ava put on the disco tune, and no one left the dance floor, and everyone kind of went from like pushing themselves off to just dancing in this like beautiful disco bliss. And
Wow.
like, yeah, very few people left the dance floor. It was just one of those like moments that I'll always remember being like, is this going to work? Are people going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? This is like mental. And then, yeah, it was just beautiful. And yeah, we gave it a proper good send off.
I think the last mosh pit I was in was at Islington Mill, and it was Melt Banana.
Oh, amazing.
And the X supported them.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that, because I think they played twice at the Mill, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they played. There was time they played for our. Did we do both their shows? I can't remember. They definitely headlined Fat Out Fest, and then I think the X show was a separate. A different one.
That was
It was
one I
definitely
went
at the
to.
Mill, but I don't know if it was a Fat Out show or whether it was a other promoter. I can't remember.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was like I felt like I was 15 again at Rock nightclub going mental.
Yeah.
But, so you mentioned the borough. So this was like your 2-year residency at Islington Mill.
Yeah.
How was that then? And what was the
It was mental
concept
but
behind
beautiful. So I worked for the Mill as their venue manager from 2010 until until we closed the venue. And Verity also worked for the Mill. She worked alongside Bill, helping him out with the visual arts side of things. So we were both like kind of had been part of the Mill community for a while, and are both, obviously the Mill was the main venue that Fat Out used at that time. The Mill at that time was going through some big developments and also applying for the capital bid to fix the roof and doing a lot of fundraising, and they couldn't manage the sort of in-house running the venue as well as doing all this future planning work. So they offered the space to Fat Out on a 2-year program residency, which we took on, and it worked really well because we were so ingrained in it anyway, that the actual sort of change, the sort of handover was relatively minimal. And then we rebranded the space. We called it the Borough, and it was amazing. It was like having your own complete access to your own space and being able to do what you want was incredible. It was a 24-hour venue, so in terms of it was like there were some really insane times, and I felt that it was like looking back on it, it was just it was full on, really intense. We were going from having club nights finish 8 a.m. to then having a wedding that was arriving 2 hours later. So we're all changing it over, all fucking off our heads and trying to but no, it was amazing. And they offered it to us on a 10-year lease to continue with it, which we considered and looked into and started talking to architects about changing the entrance and stuff. But I think it was at that point I just reached the end of my 20s, and also I'd been at the Mill at that point for coming up to 10 years in some capacity, working in that space. And I think we, Verity and I, just kind of wanted a bit of a change and some new challenges, and to kind of see where we could kind of where our careers were going to lead us next. But I definitely kind of look back on it, and I do miss it. But there's also been what Fat Out's kind of grown to be, and how I've personally developed since not being tied to that venue. It was the right decision to shut it when we did. Although I've said I'd really like to go back in for a month residency when Fat Out turns 20 in 2028. So I was like, if we can go back in that space at some point, or just throw one party in there again, I would absolutely jump at the
just do a one-off show.
Do a one-off show. But it was amazing, and it was the people at that time as well. There were a lot of musicians living at the Mill. A lot of and there was just the music that was made during that period, and the community that was there that isn't here now, has kind of formed lifelong friendships and collaborations and bands and all sorts. So it was a very special time. I think especially during COVID, I'm a deeply nostalgic person anyway, and especially during this time, looking back on it and stuff, it's been a lot of very fond memories happened within that little venue.
So what have you been doing since the you parted ways with the mill, and what have you been doing?
So I'm still based here. So I've got a studio at the mill. So I work from there. Fat Out. Then literally almost as the borough finished, the Outlands network was created and formed, which Fat Out is the Manchester partner of. So the Outlands network is a group of venues, curators, promoters, producers, all who have an invested interest in experimental music and kind of broad, increasing audiences for experimental music and growing the people that will engage with it. And yeah, originally there was 8 partners across the UK, all across England, all outside of London. And we basically did 3 tours a year, which we toured around all the partners, and each partner put forward a commission that they wanted to do. And it was amazing. So Fat Out's commission, we got to go to Japan with Impa TV. So Fat Out commissioned Impa TV to work with a Japanese psychedelic band called Kujaku.
Check them out.
We basically went over in June, what was it? Yeah, end of May, early June 2019. We went over to Japan for nearly 3 weeks with Impa TV, who were Isadora and Jamie, who were 2 kind of video and film artists based at the mill. And yeah, we went over there, met the band in Hamamatsu, which is where they're from, which is about 2-3 hours south of Tokyo. And came up with an idea for the project, which ended up being called Enso Sone. And basically Jamie and Izzy designed a new lighting, visual and stage show for Kujaku, which we then toured in November 2019. So yeah, a lot of the Fat Out work in nearly 3 years since then, that as a venue has been based around Outlands and kind of being part of that network and kind of trying to sort of build those audiences and support those artists. My aim was to get Fat Out Fest. So the last Fat Out Fest we did in full scale was in 2017, and my aim was from 2020 onwards to make it an annual event. And that would kind of be my link to Fat Out still being part of the mill, because it would happen in the warehouses behind Islington Mill. That obviously didn't happen because of COVID. So in 2020, we did a digital stream festival. We were hoping to do some social distance events, but unfortunately we went into tier 3 just before, a week before that happened, which was really annoying. But yeah, so a lot of it. And then I work for Sounds to Other City as well, which Fat Out has created a stage at since 2010, well, maybe 11. And I work for Supernormal Festival as well. So I've done a lot more kind of freelance stuff, less kind of the DIY early sort of shows that we did, predominantly because when we had the venue, it was really easy to kind of be able to put on bands and sort of make it work financially when we had a bar. Whereas they're kind of putting on the sort of shows in venues when you've got venue hires to pay and we can't pay the sound engineer through the bar and that kind of thing, became a bit unsustainable. So kind of have done less of that. But when gigs reopen again, I think that's something that I want to sort of maybe see how I can ensure that I'm still kind of doing those things that we started off as. And making sure that those artists in that scene is still. But I mean, I don't know, there are so many other younger promoters in Manchester now that are doing that, and have got that pure DIY spirit still. So maybe I'll leave it to them.
Well, I just thought about All Tomorrow's parties.
Oh yeah, ATP.
So would it? I'm just thinking there isn't. Is there anything that sort of, obviously they went under, didn't they? That was a whole kind of incident and all that. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but they kind of went, I guess, bankrupt or
bankrupt. Yeah, I mean, actually, ATP was the festival that I kind of grew up on, and I used to go to all the time when it happened. And that model of festival, I still think is, it's definitely the most comfortable. And it was just about everything was indoors, and it was great because everyone was on one site, but everyone was camping, and yeah, and just love to see all these like scenic cave and Butlins in Minehead and stuff. It was amazing. And Verity, David, and I actually went to the Prestatyn Pontins. I mean, we were young and ambitious, but idiots, just to be like, yeah, let's go and see if we can be ATP. And then this is when ATP was still going as well. And then they were like, yeah, it was 100K to just hire the site, and we were like, okay, we're out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that mod like there are still festivals like, well, I went to Bangface last year, and Block has sort of dabbled with that holiday park style of but I think the music that and Safe as Milk as well, they attempted to do something at a holiday park kind of ATP style, but didn't actually make it because they couldn't make they went bankrupt as well. So I think it's just like, I mean, I would love to be able to be part of something to make a festival like ATP again, but yeah, it's
not sustainable.
Really sustainable, yeah.
That's a shame.
I mean, I've like, it'd be a pipe dream if, I don't know, like maybe through Outlands or something, that like some of the big sort of alternative festivals in the UK kind of club together to try and do something on a holiday site. I would 100% love to be involved in something like that, but yeah, it's a huge financial risk to take on, and there's been quite so many kind of failures along the way that other companies have had and stuff, that it would be super risky. And yeah, so I think for now, Fat Outfest will stay in the bright streets of Salford.
aside from your work as a promoter, you also play a little bit. You have a band, which I think the name is brilliant. Godspeed, you Peter Andre.
Yeah.
How's that going?
People thinking, yeah, good. So the name, again, that's what me and Kasky, who I play with. Kasky was in a band called Death of Money, who played some of the really early shows like Samuel Sharp did, the early Fat Out shows. So yeah, I met Kasky, I think like maybe 2007, 2008. And then, yeah, he moved up to Manchester about 3-4 years ago now. And yeah, the name, I'm not sure where it came from, to be honest. We've got a few friends that claim they came up with it. And we've had kind of mixed reviews of people being like, yeah, it's the best name in the world, to being like, that's stupid, we're not booking you because that name's dumb. So yeah, it's definitely been a talking point, which I love. And yeah, I mean, I didn't play any music up until I was about 30, so about 3 years ago now. And I joined a noise collective, improv collective called Water, with Louise Woodcock, who I mentioned earlier, and Lauren Bolger, who's a poet, and Rachel Goodyear, who was a visual artist, and Amy Horgan, who was a musician. But me, Rachel, and Amy none of us had been in bands or played music before. So it was just a really like very open, very free way of kind of developing like my zero skills as a musician to kind of be able to make some form of noise. And then, yeah, me and Cass started Godspeed a couple of years ago. We started off just jamming we used to have a studio on the 4th floor, just doing like stupid gothy covers of pop songs. And then, yeah, it's kind of like massively changed to like that, being the front woman of Godspeed, because Water was very comfortable. There was 5 of us. It was all improv, and it was, yeah, you could kind of, yeah, it wasn't as I didn't feel as exposed as I do with Godspeed, whereas Godspeed now is like sort of fronting the band, and we like some of it's still improv, but we write our tunes now. And it's been great, and it's been great working with different costume designers and visual artists to sort of with visuals and stuff like that. And yeah, it's when you've been putting on shows for as long as I have, it's pretty easy to get shows. You'd be like, I'll put your band on 15 times, give me a show, bitch. Yeah. So yeah, it's been really fun, and like touring and that kind of thing has been like so much more fun. Like it's so much more fun turning up to a show and the promoter getting you some dinner and giving you a drink, and then you just sort of sound check, and then you sit there chatting to people. Oh, I get this, instead of being like, oh fuck, I haven't made enough money on the door. Oh shit. So someone's blagging me for a guest list. None of that.
Like, can I have a bottle of bells in my rider, please?
Yeah. So yeah, I've got a big taste for how the other half live, and yeah, we'd like I've just had an EP out on a record label based up here, which was kind of me and Cassie actually live together now, but the first lockdown we weren't. And yeah, so those two tracks were kind of made remotely, and he kind of sent me the beats. So I sort of put my vocals over the top, and then we kind of made it that way, which was a way I hadn't recorded before, which was really good, really interesting learning curve. And then we're going to be making a video as soon as we can, and we've got plans to record a record this year. We were meant to be going out to Germany in November to go and play in Freiburg, but that's been postponed. And so we had a few, like, we toured with Aja a lot. So yeah, it's been amazing and been really, really like so much fun. And me and Cass have got like a really strong like musical connection, and we just kind of it really kind of works us.
So
like,
what's your setup then, like in terms of like instrumentation and
I mostly just use a TC Helicon vocal processor, and kind of predominantly use my voice, but I just got the Korg vocoder synth, so that's been super fun. So I'm kind of been playing around with some drones and ridiculous trance beats and stuff. So I got that just for Christmas. So I've been doing all of that. And then Kaski's got a drum machine, and Looper, he does vocals as well, and has got the next stage up of the Korg synth that I've got. So it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of really opened up my creativity and creative thought again, because when I had the venue and the years before it closed, like the Fat Out and the Borough and the Mill was just like consumed my whole life, and it was like everything that I was known for and focused on, and kind of didn't really do anything creatively outside of that at all. Since kind of not having a 24-hour venue to run but still being part of this community, just sort of getting better skills on the instruments that I've got, and it's been a really kind of like beautiful way of kind of being creative again, sort of since I hadn't really done anything creative since I left uni.
How many shows have you played so far?
Quite a few. I'd say 20 or so, 15, 20. We kind of like just before like lockdown, we kind of found our little niche. We started playing a lot of queer like noise shows, and we that's my kind of favorite audience, the kind of sort of alternative queer scene, and we played Queer Noise Club, which is a night that Aja started in Nottingham. And from that we played Eat Me and Preach, which has been in Liverpool, and it's been like that kind of like, that's who I feel most comfortable with. And like I've sort of been playing more with like sort of costume and sort of wearing sort of lingerie or like fetish gear on stage, and I definitely feel that when I'm playing to a queer audience, that I can kind of be my most kind of brash and sort of hypersexual, and sort of like kind of my most sort of
free,
sort of
just kind of like do what you
performance within that community. Whereas like when we played when we went on tour, we played the Brudenell, which is one of my favorite venues in the whole of the country, but it was kind of the night before we had done Queer Noise Club, and it was like this kind of really small, intimate, like I think 120 cap venue with a super queer audience. And the next night fucking going around in a like PVC dress and fishnets and stuff was I was fine with that. And then the next day we were at the Brudenell, and it was obviously it was in the big room, and it was there's probably a similar amount of people, but everyone was kind of sat down and generally was straight and white, and like I was like, oh god,
okay,
a bit more
different audience.
But that's the beauty of touring, isn't it? Each night it kind of the venue changes and the audiences change, and you kind of adapt accordingly.
So for your next festival is scheduled for 20 October this year. Is that how's that looking?
Like what the plans for 2020, which I then postponed to 2021, I would be very surprised if that could happen. We were literally just about to put tickets on sale and announce who our curatorial partners are, because Fat Out Fest now is co-curated and always will be now, because I think it's the first two that we did, me and Verity and David put the lineups together, and then from the 2014 one onwards, I've always across like not even just for the festival but club nights and various other nights, like sort of co-produced or curated it, because I just like it just opens up the program and means I can work with more people, and then the opportunities are reciprocated, because I've been invited to like curate various festivals and stages at other festivals, and it just kind of for my audience as well, kind of like it. There are bands that I've booked for Fat Out, that my partners have booked for Fat Out that I've never heard of, that are fucking amazing. So it kind of just opens up what the program can be and kind of makes it more inclusive. So what I've planned for 2020, there's no way that I'd be very surprised if there's any way we can get close to doing something of that scale this year. Even if we can, have sort of non-social distance events in October, the like lead time I need to sort of plan and pull something together of that ambition, I don't think I'll be able to do. So yeah, my plan for next month, once I've got a lot of boring Arts Council funding related work to do this at the moment. So once that's out of the way, to kind of think about what Fat Out Fest could look like, and how I did the 2021 in the end was kind of having the digital 3-day broadcast as the kind of central thing that I knew could happen, and then all the other extra, the social distance shows, and we had a murder mystery planned, and the kind of in-person stuff were going to be kind of added extras should we be able to do it. So I think I'm going to kind of have a similar programming mentality for this one, just so that like even if we're like in the same position we're in now in October, that we can still engage with artists, still pay artists, commission new work, and yeah, even I really hope we can have social distance audiences at least. But yeah, I'm going to hopefully be able to do some planning next month about what our year might look like.
It's just not the same. I know you're talking about people who've been doing these like streams and stuff, and to me, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't. It's really hard to transmit that energy through like the internet. You know, it's like when you're there in person, it's like you can feel it, man, like all around you, and it's like you can't it's very hard to recreate that, I feel.
Really hard, if not impossible. I think there's been like some interesting streams. Like we did the after parties we did for Fat Out Fest, definitely did work and kind of translated, because it wasn't how we had dancers in the White Hotel, we had the DJs in the booth, and then social distance dancers that we filmed, and then Impa TV kind of in their style of kind of layering things over and adding effects to it. So it kind of you felt the energy of a dance floor, even like I think you could put that on and like dance around your kitchens. Obviously it's nowhere near the same, but it kind of sort of gives some of the same energy. And to be honest, they're like, although I'm super proud of what we did for Fat Out Fest, and we've got all these amazing performances recorded and after parties and talks and stuff, but like producing it was amazing, and kind of working with the events team again and working with artists again was great. But actually over the weekend, it was just me, Jamie and Izzy, and my producer Sean and Jodie sat in our studio at the Mill, just kind of watching numbers on Mixcloud, being like, oh, okay. Like, and there just wasn't that engagement. It was as much work as running a normal festival. And I was as exhausted, if not more exhausted at the end, because things were constantly changing. Like it put problem solving to new levels.
Yeah.
But when you run an event, when you see that the audience, or you're watching it as an audience member yourself, and you kind of can hug the artist afterwards and be like that togetherness, makes all the graft completely worthwhile. Whereas I actually kind of went into quite a sort of a really low point, sort of bordering on depression in most of November through that lockdown, because I think it kind of like the sort of post festival come down was really, because it was just, and then going back into lockdown, it kind of felt like we'd got to a place where we were doing stuff again, and then it's kind of been going almost back to square one. So yeah, it's been such a like hard time for everyone, but for the events industry in particular, it's fucking disintegrated our industry.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Like, obviously, it might be an obvious answer, but how much has the pandemic affected this kind of music industry, like Manchester and the venues and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, from where I'm sat, so with Fat Art, with Sounds of the City, with Supernormal, and with Summer Beta, like, because we're independent, and there's like a lot of people that work for who like keep the organisation going and doing it because of the love of it, and they're sort of dedicated to supporting that organisation. We've all been all right. Like, there's been a lot of, the Arts Council have been great at supporting, and there's been like, yeah, the emergency funding, the cultural recovery funds, and those kind of things have kind of sustained things financially, and sort of like hopefully will ensure that when we can return, we will. I think what's been really difficult has been people's mental health through all this, especially remote, like when working remotely, like people have been affected in different ways, and like people's work, like productivity has been massively affected by that, and then the guilt that surrounds being unproductive when you're hitting a shit part of lockdown. So that's been really difficult, and I think but what has been really positive is the kind of sharing and the support and the community, and like people's kind of willingness to like just ensure that people are okay during this, and checking in, and like within like Sophie B, who is the sort of programmer at Freight Island, she's been amazing at sharing how some of the successes, and how, like, because obviously they were opened as soon as they could, and they've been like, yeah, kind of keeping a lot of performers in work and stuff when they could. So even just sort of sharing like health and safety risk assessments, or those kind of things that you kind of need, because everyone is kind of winging it when things were open, or like doing digital streams and stuff. So that kind of like, yeah, sharing of knowledge, supporting each other, like, and when it does reopen, kind of, yeah, ensuring that some like venues and stuff like that are surviving, and that kind of thing. And then the Save Our Scene, the Manchester Save Our Scene, which a lot of like the High Hoops and Meat Free lot, like they've raised thousands and stuff, and fed that down to like a lot of the freelancers, like the sound engineers or the cleaners, or the door staff that were all freelance and not on furlough. So although it's been like dire, and like everyone is like, it's taken a huge hit on organizations and people's mental health and stuff, there has been positivity. And also I think there did need to be like the UK festival market was like so saturated. Like I think it's something crazy, like Live Nation owned like 42% of the festival market. Like, don't quote me on that statistic, but I think it's something like that, which is just insane. Like, and you think how many festivals there are in the UK, and for one company to earn 42% of that, like, I think it's pretty grim. So I think in terms of like the independents and the people that are running festivals because they want to support a certain scene, or like create this environment for certain for their audiences and artists, for like sort of to escape this cruel world we live in. I hope there's going to be kind of a sort of new lease of those ones coming up, and that those are the ones that will survive, because they're coming from good places and they're run by people for the right reasons and not for capitalist gain. And hopefully that's kind of will be the shift after this, is that like people will realize that this kind of capitalist wheel that we're living in, that's just churning things out and churning people out, and it's not right.
We could do another podcast about the state of the politics at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, that's a whole other. That's another wormhole we could get down. Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you. This is what I've been one question I've been asking all my guests so far, because you mentioned about capitalism and stuff. Is do you think it's wrong to profit from your art? If you get what I mean, like. It may say you get to a point, maybe you get offered, say, like a band gets offered a major record deal, and it's like, am I, here's a chance for me to be successful and whatever, but am I selling out? Am I, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, I mean, if you can make money from your art, and you can sustain a like comfortable life from your art and from your music, then I have absolutely no problem with that. I think when it turns and that you're on the other, like the really extreme level, when you've got like millions or billions in the bank and you're hoarding that, which to be honest, I think even some of the biggest musicians in the world probably, like, they're not billionaires. I don't know, maybe, you know. So I think it's like, I don't know. I think if you're like, I don't see it selling out if you can make a career from what you do. I think if you're like sort of hoarding money and not sort of, or not like, but also think if your band gets to a certain level of success, then that will then also be the job of a whole team of people. Do you know what I mean? Their tour manager, their merch person, their record producer, all those kind of things create jobs for people and create interesting jobs. So no, I don't think like profiting a bit from what you do is wrong. I think if it comes to extremes where you're like profiting billions and it's really like unfair, then yeah. But no, I think from like, if it like, I think especially within the like alternative scene, there's a lot like when certain bands who were experimental, were DIY, get to a level of success, there's almost and become maybe more commercial and stuff. There is a kind of, I don't know, people does get under people's skin a bit sometimes, doesn't it? But I personally think that if you can kind of make a good life for yourself and your family, and also support other people through what you do, then I'm happy with that.
So if some top guy at Glastonbury came up, rang you up and said, Emma, do you wanna? I've got a job for you, booking one of the stages or something.
Yeah, if Glastonbury offered Fat Out of stage, I'd take it in a heartbeat, of course.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But I mean, that's like, and that's the kind of thing. Like it's, I don't know, like building. Like I am ambitious, and I've got certain things that I'm actually creating a stage at Glastonbury is on my list of things I would love to do. But I mean, like, I don't know if like Virgin Music came and offered me a job in like, then I wouldn't take that, for instance. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of, it depends like what it is, and I love Glastonbury. But yeah, no, I think depending on what the job was, or what, like, but equally, like, I don't know, if McDonald's asked Fat Out to create a show or something like that, I wouldn't do it. So I think it's kind of what that, like, who that corporate like job offer is from. But I mean, like something like Glastonbury, like that's beautiful. I would love to do that.
So in terms of, I mean, obviously you talked about one of your ambitions being it would be so cool to get a stage at Glastonbury. What are your kind of goals and ambitions for Fat Out, like 10 years, 15 years from now?
So I definitely would like to get Fat Out to a place where the festival's annual, and that the festival kind of grows, not massively in capacity. I'm not looking like, I think the last one we had about 500 people in. I'd like to get it to a place where I could comfortably sell like 1,000, 1,500 tickets for like over the weekend, that kind of sort of small mid-size. And just to kind of keep making it like inviting new people to create stages so that it doesn't become stagnant or boring or like repetitive. Kind of new ideas and new energy I'm very much into. So for Fat Out, I think I would like Fat Out to kind of be focused around that annual event rather than lots of smaller events throughout the year, and then kind of continue whatever work with Outlands, if that kind of touring commissions and commissioning new artists, that side of things I'm super interested in, and facilitating artists, and that side of the work I completely buzz off. Like working one-on-one with musicians to create projects is my jam. So that's sort of Fat Outside. And then for Godspeed, I would love to record an album with Charlotte Church. That's on my list of things. Like Katsuki's Welsh, and I absolutely adore Charlotte Church. And she did like this like kind of more kind of weird alternative album with some band, and I've just always thought we'd get on really well. And I would just like, with Godspeed, just you have to tour and play more, as much as possible, really, whenever that restarts.
Yes, hopefully, things will get better soon, and
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. And I've got this this sort of PR idea with the name that either that Peter Andre will get wind of it and then like join the band, and it will resurge his pop career as kind of joining as my backing vocalist, and he'll be really into it because it's the first time that he can actually kind of express himself through noise.
Now that
And
would
then
be a story.
that would be a story in it, but
That
then
would
Kate
be.
Price would sue us because we've the first bit of merch that we got printed was Jordan and Peter in like black metal makeup on like t-shirts. So she'll see that t-shirt and sue us, and but that will give us loads of press, and then we'll just be able to make a living off Godspeed, and because we'll be super famous because Peter's in the band and Jordan's suing us.
Watch this space, everyone.
Yeah, watch this
It's
space,
gonna
everyone.
happen. It's gonna happen. Well, thanks so much, Emma, for coming on.
Oh, thanks so much. It's nice to see you again
Nice to
virtually.
see you, and good luck with Fat Out, and hopefully the COVID stuff will be over soon. We can all carry on, and
Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, love.
Take care. Bye bye.